Grizzlies GM Zach Kleiman took a blowtorch to the Ja Morant rumors on Wednesday afternoon, not long after we wrapped this show. The tweet came from the Daily Memphian's Drew Hill. It was at exactly 12:43 p.m. He had reached out to Zach in an attempt to get a response to speculation that the franchise might look to move on from Ja Morant following the season. This, of course, connected to the Ringers' Howard Beck, saying that, he was making a round of calls and talking to a front office member. And Howard Beck said an NBA front office member told him, hey, listen, just keep your eye on Memphis. Keep your eye on Ja Morant, because I wouldn't be surprised. Just keep an eye on what's going on down there in Memphis. I could see them maybe moving on from Ja in the offseason. Best I can tell, Drew Hill reached out to Zach saying, hey, would you respond to this? Do you have a response? And Zach, it seems, said, yeah, buddy, I'll respond. And here's what he said, quote, I can't blame other executives for fantasizing about us trading Ja, but it's just that. Fantasy. We are not trading Ja. Continue to underestimate Ja, this team, and this city, and we will let our performance on the floor speak for itself. I'm not going to give this nonsense further oxygen and look forward to getting back to basketball. End quote. Your thoughts, Big Bet Bennett.
Okay, so my first thing would be, I don't think he even had to because it was really just people talking, and you saw some aggregated tweets saying report the Grizzlies might move on. It was never really a report of any kind. It was just internet fodder, right?
It was just a poor example of how poorly the internet works sometime in the year 2025. And I'll walk you through it in a second, but continue your thought.
Yeah, so my first reaction would be, well, he probably didn't really have to say anything. However, the Luka Doncic trade happened, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that because of that and how massive that got and just took the whole NBA world by surprise, I think I totally understand why he said something. I totally get it. Just because you want to put that to bed, even rumblings, you want to put that to bed immediately.
I think so.
Yeah.
And I like that he did it. And furthermore, I like the way that he did do it. So if the question is, how did we get here? Let me walk you through that real quick. Because you're right. It wasn't really a report. It gets twisted into there's a report, but it's not really a report.
Right.
Sometimes it's interesting to see when something first enters your space. Okay, this is how it's presented to me. Now let's trace it back to its foundation. How did we get here? And so the truth is, I think it was a couple of days ago where this started just sort of popping off on Twitter, and it was tied to something somebody said, not even something somebody reported. It was just something somebody said on a podcast.
Right.
The somebody, Howard Beck, who worked for the Ringer. And to be clear, nothing I'm about to say should be considered a shot at Howard Beck. He's a reputable and accomplished NBA reporter. He was just talking on a podcast, same way we're talking right now. Mm-hmm. The same way I talk on the Eye on College Basketball podcast, 3 times a week. And as I was thinking through it, this happens to me all the time, us on the Eye on College Basketball podcast all the time. I don't say things like that strictly but to avoid stuff like that. But it does happen where you're just sort of talking and then it gets aggregated. And next thing you know, Gary Parrish said is an actual headline in newspapers in various parts of the country. So imagine if I went on the Eye on College Basketball podcast tomorrow, and at some point in it, I said, I'm talking to Matt Norlander, and I said, hey, listen, man, I'm just calling around talking to other Big 12 coaches, and they're all saying, hey, listen, Bill Self's only 62 years old, and he's got multiple national championships, and he's had back-to-back preseason number 1 teams. But he also had a heart procedure 2 years ago. And obviously, these two teams that were both preseason number 1 have been wildly disappointing. He is going through the worst 2 years of his entire Kansas career right now, back to back. And so when I'm talking to other Big 12 coaches, one of the things I'm hearing, people are telling me is just keep an eye on Bill, because when this season's over, he could hang it up. I want to be clear. I'm not saying that. I'm not hearing that. I'm just saying I could theoretically say something like that on a podcast tomorrow. And if imagine by tomorrow night that had been turned into Gary Parrish's reporting that Bill Self might retire at the end of the season. Because that is what happened here.
Yeah.
That is how we got to The Grizzlies general manager releasing a statement to the Daily Memphian about Ja Morant. It was nothing more than what I just explained. Just take Bill Self out of it and put Ja Morant in it, and that's what it was. The conversation, even according to Howard Beck, is I'm talking to executives and front offices all over the league, just doing a round of calls. So what do you think? Who's the big name gonna? How are those conversations go? And he said, just when there's one person, not even 5 people, one person said, keep an eye on Ja Morant. Wouldn't be surprised if they do something down in Memphis with Ja Morant. And next thing you know, it gets twisted into everything it got twisted into. It wasn't an actual report. It was just somebody saying, I wouldn't be surprised if the Grizzlies think about moving off of Ja Morant. Like, you could have also said, I wouldn't be surprised if it rains on Sunday. What does that even mean? And so it gets turned into this thing. And frankly, and I talked with Vernon about this yesterday, I didn't know what to do with it. Because on one hand, I see Grizzlies fans talking about it.
Sure.
I've got Grizzlies fans texting me about it. GP, what do you think about this? On the other hand, it's nothing. And I never believed it was going to be anything.
No, me either. It gets turned into something because you get like these aggregator accounts that put like in big report.
Well, then you know what happens, right. And then everybody, then you. This is the way
it's a spiral.
This is the way our business works. It takes one person. I'll just inside baseball stuff. This is the way this stuff works. We have a Slack channel at CBS Sports, college basketball, right? And we're all in there. And constantly links are getting dropped in there. Hey, do we need to do something with this? Did you see this? So-and-so's hurt. So-and-so got an extension. Did you see this? Did you hear about this? So here's what happens. Howard Beck says this into a microphone. And you ready for this? I bet you Howard Beck had no idea it was going to turn into this.
No, they're doing a podcast.
He's just talking.
Right.
He was probably on 2.5 hours sleep just talking the same way I'm sometimes talking.
Right.
He had no idea it was going to turn into this. Because if he did, you know what he would have done? He would have wrote it. He would have reported it. He would have said, sources have told the Ringer that the Grizzlies could look to move on from Ja Morant. It would have been an actual story that he reported. He was just talking. He had no idea it was going to turn into this. So it turns into, he says it, and one person hears it and goes, oh, that's interesting. Howard Beck from the Ringer says the Grizzlies could... then puts it in Slack. Hey, I was just listening to this podcast. Howard Beck said the Grizzlies might move on from Ja Morant. Do we want a headline on that? Sure, give it to me. That'll get some page views. So then it's the Ringer's Howard Beck says he would. It starts just like that. Says he wouldn't be surprised if the Grizzlies move on from Ja Morant this offseason. So then now that's up on the internet somewhere. Well, somebody else who works for another organization sees that, is like, all right, I guess this is a thing. Do we need that? Well, I guess if USA Today's got it as a headline, I guess we should get it as a headline over here. Next thing you know, it's a headline at 2 different places. Now it's a headline at 7 different places. Now you Google Ja Morant, and you know what pops up? Nothing but trade speculation.
Right.
Nothing. The dunks don't pop up anymore. The Wemby stuff don't pop up anymore. You Google Ja Morant this time yesterday, it's nothing but trade stuff. That's how this happens.
Yeah.
So then Zach is compelled to respond to it. And I don't want to speak for him, but I assume for the exact same reasons you've already suggested. When you have something out there like this attached to your franchise point guard, and you know there's just no chance of you actually doing that. Because remember what Howard Beck said, not a report, but it was this offseason. If you know there's just no chance. We have a 25-year-old superstar under contract for multiple years. I ain't saying we ain't going to be married to Ja Morant for the next 15 years, but he ain't getting moved this offseason. If you know there's actually no chance of that, kill it. Kill it. Strongly. Because you don't want it swirling in his head.
No.
Because as nothing as it was, it still reaches him. And I don't care what you tell him privately. Unless somebody says something publicly, you don't know how to feel about that. I want to be clear before I even start making these comparisons. I don't make them because I think of myself this way. I only make them to try to put them in real world terms. I'm not important enough for anybody to care about. But if I were listening to a podcast today, a sports media podcast, and just randomly one of the sports media people was like, and just like, if you care about college basketball coverage, keep an eye on Gary Parrish over at CBS Sports. I'm hearing that they might move on from him, after the offseason. You've probably seen him. He ain't getting no younger. That would bother me, whether it was true or not. It would get in here somewhere, And I'd be like, okay, who are they talking to that said that? Why do they think that? And then if my bosses didn't say anything to me about it, I'd be like, well, maybe they are looking to move. I mean, are they getting tired of flying me back and forth to New York every week? Do they think it's just not worth it? Could they not find somebody that lives a 30-minute car ride away to talk about Kim Pom on TV? All this stuff would just...
Yep.
Even if it was nothing. If it's something, it's in your head. The problem is, even if it's nothing, it's also in your head. So I thought Zach was smart here. Kill it.
Yep, I agree.
Kill it. We got 28 games left in this thing starting tonight. You're alone in second in the West right now. Status report looking pretty good.
Oh my God, it looks good.
We don't need no distractions. So one day before we restart this thing, let's go ahead and kill it. Just kill it. And then also kill it, not in a way that just buries it and alleviates the conversation from Ja's head. It's a way that also serves as a rallying cry for your fans. There's nothing Memphians and Memphis fans and Grizzlies fans love to hear more than, don't keep underestimating us. Keep doubting us. Keep acting like you don't believe we can do what we're doing here. Keep acting like you think a franchise point guard's got to be shipped out of this small market. I know he didn't say all those words, but it was the same sort of sentiment. It was the us versus them type of sentiment, which people enjoy.
Yep.
You saw that quote?
I like it.
I like it. Everybody liked it. So it worked perfectly. You'd rather not have to release a statement responding to a random throwaway thought from an NBA reporter about your franchise point guard. You'd rather not even have to address that. But given that it happened, I don't think he could have addressed it any better.
Right.
Any more forcibly and better. It worked. And if you're Ja Morant, again, I don't want to speak for Ja any more than I want to speak for Zach. But if I were Ja Morant, I'd be real appreciative of that. I'd be real appreciative of hearing my boss. Because, you did just watch another 25-year-old superstar get traded.
Right.
And once that happens, even though the truth is that shouldn't mean it's possible to happen to you as much as it should show the reaction to that, should show the whole world how stupid it is to trade 25-year-old superstars under contract. The Luka Doncic trade should not, because I've heard some people say this, well, that should show you anybody could get traded. No, you know what that should show you? Nico Harrison doesn't know what he's doing. That's what that should show you. Look at the reaction from basically everybody in the world to that trade. It's like, what are you doing? You can't do that. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, who needs to play it down the middle, even acknowledged, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe they did that. I was surprised by that. So the whole world just told you it's stupid to trade a 25-year-old superstar, right? Mm-hmm. But still, when that stuff's sitting out there, you can kill it and get everybody on the same page again pretty quickly, and also maybe even make it better.
Yeah.
Maybe even make it better, because it has not been the best of Ja Morant seasons. You know that. We talked about it earlier in the week. So then you read they might be thinking of moving off of you. That can bother you. It would bother me. I don't know if it bothered him. It would bother me. And so to have your boss come out so strongly and just say, absolutely not, this is our guy, I would appreciate that if I were Ja.
Me too. I would too.
The Gary Parrish Show, live weekdays at 10 a.m.